move to our next speaker, Aldo Lipani from University College London. I see your slides, but I don't see you. Oh, there you are. Okay, the floor is yours, Aldo.
Hello, everybody. So thanks for the invitation and the nice introduction. So I'm very happy to present you our most recent choice paper titled How Am I Doing? Evaluating Conversational Search Systems Offline. So this is a joint work with Ben Carter and Emine Elmans. So what we are trying to achieve with this work is basically creating a methodology to build test collections for conversational search systems. And in this paper, what we provide is a methodology for building test collections with relevant judgments. We provide an evaluation measure based on a user interaction model. And because this user interaction model requires parameters, we also provide an approach to collecting user interaction data in order to fit this model. Now, before presenting the solution that we found about building test collections for conversational search systems, let's first have a look at the way we are currently evaluating conversational systems. So the one that we'll now discuss, so the technique that we now discuss is basically the one that is currently used, for example, in the TrackCast at the moment, which is which basically uses a sequence of fixed questions coming from the user. And now imagine we have two systems. We have system A and system B, and they have produced a conversation about a common information need. In this case, the information need is about finding flowering plants that work in cold climates. Now, if we look at the conversation generated by system A, we see that the first answer to that question is pences, right? Which is a relevant answer. Then the second question is about how much cold can pences tolerate. And again, the system replies with something that's relevant. It's again about pences. And the third question is about whether they can survive frost. And the system replies with something that is relevant. Now, let's have a look at system B. So in system B, for the first question, this time, the system replies with something that is also relevant, but it's about yarrow. So it's another kind of plant. And then, because of the fact that we are keeping the interaction fixed, the user asks whether how much cold can pences tolerate. So the conversation went back now to pences. Now, if we kind of have developed a sense, we start thinking about these conversations, like the first conversation, I would say makes more sense, right? Because it's logical. There is an output that's coming from the system. The user is learning about that output, and it's refining the information needed to discover maybe new information about that particular thing that has just learned. While in the second case, the conversation has a kind of a disconnect between what the system has returned and what the user is asking. Therefore, if we were to analyze this second conversation, we would find this in a data set, we would think that there is some sort of bias happening here. So there is a problem in this conversation. So what I would say is that the first conversation is more satisfactory than the second one. Now, if we use traditional approaches to evaluate these systems, because they have returned every time a relevant answer, we would basically judge both systems equally well. In fact, we would score them the same, and by doing this, we wouldn't be able to discriminate between a system that is maybe more capable of guiding the user towards a better experience or better satisfaction of the information need. Now, how do we solve this problem? Well, a potential solution to this problem, so which basically is to weight less those conversations that are less likely, could be to just get the systems, deploy them to a large user base, and start logging what the user are doing with our systems. Of course, this is not something that academics can really do. So we like to develop, to build test collections instead. And also, if you are a large company and you have the possibility of deploying this conversational system to your large user base, this would kind of defeat the purpose of a test collection-based evaluation, which is basically getting a conversational system that already has some abilities, right? And like it's already quite good. And in order to mitigate the the experience that your users may have with this conversational system. Now, the question that then we try to answer in this paper is whether we can simulate this. And of course, the answer is yes, otherwise we wouldn't have had this paper published. And the way we simulate this is by looking at the literature of information retrieval and discovering that this problem has already been tackled in other information retrieval kind of issues. In particular, we look at diversity and novelty and session and task-based track. And the idea is that so the idea is to abstract queries and paragraphs to subtopics. And by doing that, we no longer need to understand the paragraph and the query. We just need to model the transition between one subtopic and the next. And here we have the examples that we just discussed before, and a third one where this time the conversation feels more natural because it's all about yellow. Okay, now how do we do this? Well, we developed a user model, which is based on the flowchart that you see on the left-hand side. And this user model basically works in this way. Like there is so we assume that there is a user that has an information need, so has an idea, selects a potential subtopic to investigate, then generates a query. This query is submitted to the system, and then based on whether the answer that has been retrieved by the system is relevant or not relevant, it will decide whether to continue selecting a new subtopic or end the conversation. Now, the problem here is how do we model the transition of the subtopics? We do that using the probabilistic graph that you see on the right-hand side, where we model every subtopic as a node and every transition from one subtopic to the other as an edge. Okay, therefore, if we want to evaluate a conversational system that takes as input questions and queries and returns as output answers in the form of sentences or paragraphs, the ingredients that we need for this test collection are a set of topics, a set of subtopics, user queries that model subtopics, transition probabilities between subtopics, and a corpus of answers, and a set of relevance judgments of answers to subtopics. Now, the first two requirements, so topics and subtopics, and the last two, corpus of answers and relevance judgments, these are things that we already know how to do that in information retrieval. The problem becomes how do we collect the queries and how do we calculate the transition probabilities? Well, for this, we provide an approach which is based on crowdsourcing to get this information. Now, it sounds like we are going back to the problem of deploying the model to get this data, but actually because we are treating each subtopic independently, we can crowdsource them quite easily without the need of having lots of conversations with the users. I mean, the way that we would have had otherwise. Now, the evaluation metric that we develop is called expected conversation satisfaction. What this this evaluation metric doesn't look like a standard evaluation metric. So it's not written as a formula, but it's actually an algorithm. And what this algorithm does, it implements the simulator that I just described in the flowchart, and also it computes the score. So it evaluates the conversation. Now, for this algorithm, we provide two variants, which basically change in the way the line 16 of this algorithm is implemented. So one is called relevance independent, and the other one is called relevance dependent. And the difference is that the transition to the next subtopic in one case is dependent on whether the answer is relevant, and in the other case is independent. Now, here we have the results. So these are all, so this is the main result, and these are all simulated metrics. The difference between P, RBP, and ECS is the user model that is used. So, of course, for P, we are using the user model assumed in precision. For RBP, the user model assumed in rank bias precision, and ECS is our user model. And what we find is that using ECS and using the relevance-dependent transition, we correlate strongly or stronger with satisfaction. And on the right-hand side, you can see the Kendall tau and the Spellman's rho coefficient, which are higher than the other cases. Okay, in summary, I hope that I made the case that evaluating conversations offline with test collections is hard. In this paper, we have used insights from diversity and novelty sessions and tasks to design an evaluation framework based on simulation. We have also provided the results based on subtopics and relevance. We have also provided a way to crowdsource this data to build the test collection, so to get the queries and also compute these transition probabilities. And I hope that with this paper, we have made the evaluation with the conversation like the offline evaluation of conversational systems less hard. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Aldo.